One of my absolute favorite sayings is confidence catches fish. But how does an angler go about developing that confidence? We're going to talk about that on this episode of Fishful Thinker, the podcast. I'm Chad LaChance, and you're listening to Fishful Thinker, the podcast. All things fishful, all the time. Hey guys, Chad LaChance here. Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of Fishful Thinker, the podcast, brought to us, of course, by the fine folks at Sportsman's Warehouse. Visit them at sportsmans.com and they will ship your order to any one of 140 plus locations nationwide. I was just in Sportsman's the other day again, stocking up on some spring gear, and I recommend you do the same. So guys, this is an interesting topic for me today, and I like this one. It came as an email from a kid who said he'd been following along for a couple of years now. He was a novice angler, and he'd been following along for a couple of years, and he keeps hearing me talk about, confidence catches fish, and fishing your confidence baits, and things like that, and how often I refer to the word confidence in my angling. And it's something I believe firmly in all aspects of life, not just angling. But since I'm a professional angler and that's what I do is teach angling, we'll keep it relevant to that. But I'm a big believer that confidence is one of those things that it's somewhat nebulous. I think it's Joe Montana that said confidence is a very fragile thing. This is true. You can get your confidence taken away, but you have to be good at building it back or building it in the first place. And it's not something that's black and white where I can say, okay, the sun's out, you need a chrome lure. And not everybody thinks about fishing the same way, obviously. And since I'm known as Fishful Thinker and think everything through probably more than I should, I thought we'd discuss this one a little bit on the podcast and see if it'll help some of you guys out. And basically it's, I want to say it's geared towards more novice anglers per se, but I've also seen some really experienced anglers go through slumps, and I believe that a lot of that has to do with their confidence as well. And just for the record, I'm not immune to it either. I'm the guy that preaches confidence all the time, but there's a lot of times when my confidence goes away completely. And when it does, I'll do one of two things. I'll either work twice as hard to rebuild it over the course of a day, or I will literally put the boat in the trailer, put the rod in the truck, and go about changing something fundamental, as in maybe go get a cheeseburger and not even worry about it. Because one thing I know at this point, let's say I get to the lake and I run into a condition that just saps me of confidence. And since we travel a lot, and I generally hit places for a day and leave, and I don't go ahead of time, I don't typically go back, or I haven't been there in years, and so I don't know what I'm getting into when I get there. And we film a lot all over the place. So the majority of the places I film, I haven't been to in a long time, and we'll show up and something evil's happened. Like recently, one would show up and the lake had been high and stable for a while, and the ditch rider, the guy that opens the floodgates, opened the gates and let water out for a water call the evening that we got there, or the evening before we got there. So we show up at very first light, and the lake's already dropped a foot overnight. And it was high and stable for months. Well, I know that puts the fish in shock right away. And so my confidence is immediately sapped. So something like that, just running into a condition that you know is bad, can be really hard for your confidence. And you can either fight through it and try to overcome the conditions, or you can go somewhere else, which in that scenario, like I just mentioned, I've done both. We've put the boat out in the water and recognize why I don't have any confidence in it because it didn't pan out for us, or we left the boat in the trailer and went somewhere else and ran into a more favorable condition. In other words, hiding from the bad stuff. But at the end of the day, the confidence could be a major thing, an overwhelming thing, such that like I'm a newish angler and I don't have any confidence anywhere because I'm just learning. Or it could be I'm a very experienced angler and my confidence is sapped because a condition I recognize is bad, or I'm in a derby and I'm running way behind, everyone's catching them but me, and it gets your confidence down, things like that. But so there's basically two kinds of confidence, for lack of a better way to put it. And these days, my confidence level going into any given day, barring a disaster in conditions, is very high. It's very rare that I go onto a lake somewhere and not be pretty confident that I'm going to produce some fish. And I've been doing the fish a day for the month of May thing. Still plodding along on that. No, I'm not posting all the fish. Somebody commented, well, you haven't posted a fish every day. Well, no, I don't. I don't take pictures of every fish I catch, and a lot of them have been very average or even smaller than average fish. But the point of Fish a Day for the month of May is not to brag about the fish you catch. It's about to get out on the water and fish every day, and I've been doing that. So anyway, the overwhelming thing about confidence, as far as at the big picture, is it takes the most time to develop. And once you have a high level of confidence in just general angling, then any given hiccup you can recover from pretty easy. But again, they are different things. And if you're a tournament angler, I guarantee you've experienced those days where everybody caught them and you didn't, and it saps your confidence going into the next day. And some guys, it gets them down. Some guys, they make a complete mental reset and start over, and how you deal with it from there. But I really want to focus more on how you build your confidence in the beginning, because it's a big thing. And so I've got some key steps that I think will help you, excuse me, to develop your confidence in the earlier stages of your angling, or as you're trying to grow as an angler. And one of those, first and foremost, is don't get into the trap that I have to fish every kind of lure out there. You walk into Sportsman's Warehouse, and I think last I heard there's something like 20,000 SKUs in the fishing department alone, in lures, a combination of sizes, colors, and shapes, sizes, brands, all that. Well, that's a lot of things to choose. You don't have to have all of them. So the first thing I'm going to tell you is pick a few presentations, 2, maybe 3 presentations, fundamental presentations, and master them. And those presentations that you choose may be dictated on where you live or what your target species are. But pick a few and go from there. So if you're a fan of Fishful Thinker, television, YouTube channel, whatever, you're going to know that right away one of my absolute most confidence things is a jig head, a finesse jig head of some sort, an 1/8 to a 1/4 ounce jig head with a 2.5 to 4 inch body of some sort on it. It could be a tube jig, could be a gulp minnow, could be a little grub, it could be a boot tail, it could be a lot of things, but it's a finesse jig. It's a small jig, typically fished on a medium light rod, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to go into the specific presentation, but that's one of my most confidence things. And the reason is I can catch everybody with it. I'm always in the ballpark. I'm never completely out of the ballpark. The other one that I'm the most confident in of anything I can throw is a jerkbait of some sort. Again, multi-species, saltwater, freshwater, whatever. I can do it high in the water column. I can do it 15 feet down. I can do all over the place. A jerkbait and a finesse jig are my 2 most confidence thing. I'm not saying that you need to pick those 2, but I would pick 2 or 3 that are very universal, that will work in a variety of situations, and that may take a little research for you to figure that out, and also that will work in the locales you fish. So if you're fishing, let's say, shallow, weedy ponds 90% of the time, well, my confidence lures are going to have to be slightly different than what yours would be. So that's first thing, is limit your presentations, learn the nuances of those presentations, make sure that they match your tackle. In other words, your jerkbait rod is set up well for presenting jerkbaits. Your rod, I've said before, it's your lure first, then your line, then your rod, then your reel. Well, make sure that whole package is meant to go together. Same thing with your finesse jig. But by limiting to a couple of presentations and really focusing on making them work, you're going to shorten your decision process a whole bunch as far as every day. If you start changing lures every 2 minutes all the way through the day, which I see guys do, I know right away they have no confidence. And that's one of those things that, is a sign to me, is that, hey, if you're really that hung up that you're changing lures constantly, that's not a good sign. So first of all, limit your number of presentations that you're trying to master as a developing angler, and just pick really good solid ones. And if you are going to pick one, you want my advice, a jerkbait and a finesse jig, at least in freshwater, is very, very hard to beat for overall catching everywhere you go, all different species. So the next thing, after you limit your presentations a little bit, pick those, get your tackle set up, get such that you can fish them well and stick to fishing them. Force the issue and throw them when your instinct says, oh, I need to change to something else. focus on the one you've got in your hand and get fish to bite it. And when you do that, you'll get confidence that, hey, wait a minute, if I keep working this in different ways, I'll find one way that they'll bite it. And that's what it'll come down to. So that's first. Second of all, I'm going to suggest that you, to some degree, limit where you fish. If you're trying to develop confidence, if you're trying to learn, you're in the earlier stages of a learning curve. You may be fishing for a couple of years, you figure out there's a little bit more to it than what you thought. Now you're starting to develop your skills. Well, if you're ricocheting around to different bodies of water all the time, you never really get a read on the conditions. You don't know what happens to a body of water when the weather changes or when the season changes or when the water level moves up or moves down or whatever the case might be. If you fish maybe 2 or 3 bodies of water on a regular basis, you will learn what those conditions do, and you'll learn how to make your adjustment and continue catching, and that will lead to confidence. So in the same way that learning how to adjust your presentation within the parameters of a given fundamental, like in other words, how do I work this jerk bait to get them to bite it? Well, the same kind of thing with a body of water. Okay, the water dropped a foot over the last 2 weeks. Well, now what does that do to my fish? Where did my fish move to? And you know where they were, so maybe you can figure out where they went and things like that, and you will develop confidence. So limiting where all you fish. I would rather see a developing angler fish one lake 10 times than 10 lakes one time. And some people would argue with me that, well, fishing 10 lakes one time will give them more diverse experience. And I agree with that, but it won't allow you to learn what changes affect the body of water. You're effectively starting over every day. And so you need to know how changes affect bodies of water in the long run for you to be consistent and therefore confident in all of your places where you do go fish. So that's the second thing, is limit where all you fish. Maybe spend a whole season fishing, say, 2 or 3 bodies of water. And if you're picking them, if you really want to be good, I would pick them that are a little bit diverse. In other words, maybe a big reservoir and a small lake somewhere, or maybe a river and a creek. It depends on what style of angling you're trying to get good at. But at any rate, slightly different styles and ones that you can easily get to. Not a lake you got to drive 3 hours to every time you go fishing. I'm talking about a home lake or a home river, something you can fish on a regular basis and then fish there as much as you can. And along those lines, it goes without saying that time on the water will help but develop your confidence. But the next point along those lines, I say pick a lake close to home so you can hit it as often as you can, a lake or river, pond, whatever. Time on the water is super, super important, but more important than just time on the water is being observant on your time on the water. I see a lot of people on a guide trip that I can tell you are not fundamental outdoorsmen when I guide them because they miss all the observations. They don't notice anything that changes in the atmosphere. And for me, I notice everything. And to be honest with you, the most effective hunters and fishermen that I know, by a large margin, are very observant. They notice a lot of things that are going on around them all the time. And by being observant, you can then kind of put 2 and 2 together, so to speak. You can say, it's kind of if-then type logic, right? Well, the cloud came out, it was sunny, but now it got cloudy. Well, what does that do to my situation? But if you're not observant enough to realize that the passing clouds are changing something, or that all the cows that were laying on the bank are now up and feeding, or all the seagulls that were roosted are now moving around, or you're not paying attention and the water temperature came up several degrees when the sun came up, or whatever the nuance is, a wind chop, a change in wind direction, anything like that, whatever that is, if you don't notice it, you can't react to it, for one, or learn from it. So being very observant, not just on the water, but being observant when you're on the water and cataloging all those changes and any effect they may have on your day. So I was catching fish and then the wind came up and I quit catching fish. Okay, well, first you had to observe that exactly when the wind came up, your bite died off. And B, hopefully you can adjust your presentation in the long run by recognizing what changed. And putting those 2 pieces together. So that's really important, is being as observant as you can. And again, there's no such thing as too observant. Very, very, very important. Another thing along those lines, and where the powers of observation will help you a lot in keeping track of those changes and observations, is to fish with people that are far more experienced than you. And this is a big one. And it sounds self-serving, but one part of me says, find a guide, a fishing guide, and pay him to teach you, or her to teach you, as the case might be. That may not be in your budget. That's fine. Find other anglers that are better than you if you can. Maybe you're a bass guy and you want to fish with other people to learn. Well, join a bass club and fish with them for a season. Even if you have no aspirations of being some bass master guy, if you just want to learn to bass fish, go join a bass club and fish with 15 different guys over the course of a season, and you'll learn what they're doing. But the key is to be observant with them when you're in the boat. If you're going to take a guide and you're going to put some dollars involved, make sure that you interview that guide ahead of time. That's one of my pet peeves. When I was guiding all the time, I wouldn't even take people. I never even published a calendar so that people could just book a day, because I wanted to talk to them first, figure out what your goals are for the day. What is your desire? What's your goal? What's your skill level? What can I expect out of you, and what can you guys expect out of me, so that we can meet in the middle and have a great day. Well, when I'm booking a guide personally, which I do on a somewhat regular basis to take me fishing, either I need their boat or I need their knowledge or whatever the case might be, I always want to talk to them ahead of time and make sure we're on the same page. And I'm going to strongly recommend that if that's in your budget and you really want to learn stuff in a hurry and develop some confidence, fishing with either a guide or people that have more experience than you and being very observant and asking lots of questions is a quick way to do it. And for me, the only way for me to get confidence, true confidence in something, is to either, it could be anything, it could be cooking, my second love in life could be cooking, could be whatever. I either need to do it myself, which is by far the best way to develop confidence, is just to do it yourself and do it well and do it over and over again, do it successfully a couple of times, or to observe it, to physically observe somebody do it as well. So in other words, somebody I'm in the boat with, or in the case of the cooking, in the kitchen with, not somebody that I see on TV or YouTube or whatever. And that sounds dumb as a guy that hosts TV show and YouTube channel, but at the end of the day, it's edited and there's nuances that don't come across. You just can't see on film. I can't write it into an article and I can't speak it into a podcast. But you go get in the boat with me and you will see right away whatever it is that I'm talking about if you're observant and ask the right questions. So that's a really important thing, and if you can do that. And as a guide, I guided for 20 years, and as a guide, I can tell you that my biggest point of pride was seeing the light bulb goes on when somebody developed confidence in something. Typically, the most common one for me was with that finesse jig, because people don't understand it, they don't know where it is, it's lightweight, it's whatever. I guided for smallmouth and walleyes, so I did a ton of jigging as a guide, and people aren't good at it at the beginning of the day, and they're snagged a bunch, and their confidence is low because they're breaking off a bunch of jigs, and then at the end of the day they're catching fish because they figured it out, because I was able to teach them that, and then they can carry that forward with confidence and understand what needs to go on. That is invaluable information, and again, you don't have to pay somebody for that if you know people that are better than you. And to this day, I'm in my 50s, I've been fishing for a living for 2 decades, I guided for a long time. I still will, at every chance I get, fish with somebody that's more experienced than me at any given thing. It doesn't matter what it is. When I wanted to learn lake trout, I went fishing with Bernie Keefe, right? If you want to learn about high country streams, you go out with Steven Schweitzer, who wrote the book on high country stream fishing, whatever. There's whoever it might be, whatever the expert is in your area, take them and go. Saltwater guides, same thing. You want to learn from somebody, go with somebody that's very good at it. So that's another thing that I strongly recommend that will help you build your confidence, is to fish with better people and be observant, or better anglers, I should say, and be observant. And my experience is a lot of guides, if you get somebody that is asking a lot of questions, are really good. And if they have a problem with you asking questions, then you need to maybe have known that ahead of time and don't book them in the first place. And another thing I'll throw out there, I have mixed emotions on guides that fish. In other words, if I'm paying a guide, I should be doing the fishing and whatever. But if I want to learn it, I'd rather watch the guide do it. And so I can tell you that on my own guide trips, when I'm hosting them, I didn't fish at all unless I'm teaching you something right then. And that at that point, I kind of have to do it to teach it to you. And if you just stand there and watch me do it for a second, better off. And this is also, I want to throw out one thing. If you're a derby guy, a bass derby guy, and you want to have the best experience in terms of learning some stuff in a hurry, go marshal a BASS event. Go be an actual marshal, and you're in the boat with those guys. You talk about learning a lot more than if you fished with them, because you're there and you don't have to fish, meaning you don't have to be looking around at all the rest of the stuff and making your own decisions and your own presentations and all that. You just need to watch them all day long. And if you do that and you're observant, it's fantastic. And I've done that a couple times. Being a marshal is a great deal. It's the best time you can spend learning stuff. And I got to marshal Steve Kennedy, fantastic guy, Brent Chapman, Boyd Duckett. You get in the boat with guys and you learn. So that's a really important thing, particularly if you're a Bass Derby guy. That's a great way to do it. Another thing that I think leads to confidence more than what people realize, and it's something I see on guide trips as a weakness, is practice your mechanical skills. Focus on your mechanical skills, because nothing saps your confidence quicker than inability to do the physical aspects of fishing. So if you're tangling your line, if you're constantly snagged, if you're not casting accurately and you're landing stuff in bushes or whatever the case might be, those are not going to be good for your confidence. You're going to spend your day messing with equipment instead of spending your day trying to understand the nuances of fishing. So practice your mechanical skills and get good at them. I don't care if I'm 53 years old. I don't care if I've been doing this for 20 years. I still practice casting in the wintertime. I practice fly casting in the springtime. And the reason I do it is because the sharper my skills are, the better I can be as far as catching fish, and the less frustrated I will be. So getting your physical skills, casting accuracy, rod position, line control, grip, blah, 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 all those things, very important. Or if you're a boater, work on boat control. Make that part of your day. I'm going to focus on boat control. Learn how to control the boat in a fishing situation. The physical skills of fishing is basically what I'm getting at, and really focus on them. Everyone wants to focus on the magic lure or, whatever, the secret spot. The reality is there's no magic lure and there is no secret spot. The fundamentals are better. So if you have good casting skills, good line control, good boat control, you're going to be better off, period, in whatever scenario you run into. And I don't care what kind of boat it is. It could be a big fancy bass boat or a paddleboard, whatever it is you're on. If you can control it at a high level, anyone can turn their trolling motor on and go down the lake. But I can tell you that people frustrate me to no end when I get in the boat with them and they can't keep their boat control in line. And I will say this, unfair advantage, 20 years of guiding where really you have to do nothing but focus on boat control all day is a really good practice thing. And I'm very confident with boat control. It's one of those things that helps me a lot. I was just in Kansas fishing and the wind blowing, and I'm fishing standing pole timber in a brand new Ranger bass boat. And I think over the course of a whole day of fishing, I touched a grand total of about 2 trees. Meanwhile, I was sliding through those trees all smooth and buttery. Camera person's like, holy moly, how have we not hit any of these trees? Well, I've practiced boat control. Again, it's confidence to take the boat in there because that's where the fish were and I want to catch them. And therefore the boat has to go in there. But if I can't control it and I can't make my accurate casts and all that timber and control my slack, well, then I can't catch fish. And being confident in all of those things means I can go in there and do that and pull out some fish. And by the way, I pulled out a 5-pound largemouth pretty quick on one of my most confident techniques, the jerk bait. So there you have it. Confidence catches fish. And then the last thing I'll throw out there as far as all this goes is just preparing your tackle, being confident that your tackle is prepared. And for me, that's a big one. It's bigger than you might think. I spend a lot of time when we're getting ready for road trips. It typically takes me a half a day to get everything ready so that I have the baits I'm going to need or that I think I'm going to need. Because if I feel like I'm not prepared, with my tackle, my boat, my whatever. If my stuff is not organized, I've got old line on, or I've got, well, okay, this is good enough. No, tackle preparation for me is key. And some of the best derby pros out there, the late Aaron Martin's famous for spending days on tackle preparation, being the most prepared guy in the field and helping himself with success. And when I sat and talked with him about it, he's like, well, that's when I build my confidence, is while I'm developing all of that tackle for a given tournament that I'm going to go to, when I'm putting all that tackle together and preparing my boat and my gear for that tournament, that's when my confidence is building and I can visualize what's going on and da, 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 da. He went on and on and on, elaborated on the whole thing. And those conversations are things that I look back on, especially now that Aaron has passed, that you're very, very grateful for that I had early in my career. And I had some really good conversations with some really good guys. Al Lindner gave me a whole big lecture one time when I very first started going to ICAST 15, 16, 17 years ago, whatever it was. Huge for my confidence, and those kinds of things are invaluable. But the preparation time is a key thing amongst a bunch of the guys that are pro fishermen, and I think it's something that will make a big difference for you as well. So I'm going to touch on one other quick thing. If you're, let's say you are an experienced angler and you're typically confident, but now, like I said in the beginning, something's rocked your confidence for a short period of time. You're generally confident in your skills and what's going on and all that. This might be somebody that's a relatively experienced angler. It could be a guy like myself who just ran a condition he doesn't like. How you fight through that changes everything. So that's when I really settle back into my fundamentals. At the point where I get wayward, where the wheels are coming off, I'm not catching fish, something's going wrong, I feel like I'm all of a sudden I start fishing in a hurry. The first thing I want to do is slow down and focus on the fundamentals. And to the point where my camera guy is allowed to call a timeout in the boat. And when he calls a timeout, I, as the angler and the boss and the owner of the company, for the record, who pays the camera guy, has empowered the camera guy to call a timeout. And that forces me to sit down in the boat for several minutes and think about what's going on. Because when he sees the confidence falling off on me, when he sees that I'm starting to fish too fast and I'm picking up speed because we're not catching fish, and it makes me get antsy and I get anxious, and then I make mistakes and your confidence starts to unravel, he'll call a timeout. I can sit down in the boat, and that gives you time. I don't work on tackle. I don't do anything other than sit there and think about, okay, what's going on around me? What am I missing? What did I not observe? What does this fit in my scenario? And typically I always get right back to fundamentals. Pick up your most confident presentation and stick to it and go with it and try to make it happen, rather than changing a bunch of lures and changing a bunch of locations or running all over the lake. Settle in and fish with fundamentals in mind. Get back to step one and fish with fundamentals. And incidentally, I'll close with this. I had the wheels completely come off on a couple of dishes in a row that I was cooking, and I love to cook, and I get that this is a fishing podcast, but I love to cook, and this is relevant. I had a couple meals in a row that just the wheels came off. I just completely missed some seasoning stuff or technique stuff where I tried something and it just flat didn't work, and my confidence wasn't doing well as far as my ability to cook. And I don't cook with recipes. I make everything up as I go, and I felt like I just got out of balance. Well, this just happened. I go back to fundamentals, make a dish you know how to make, that you've made a million times, and focus on making it really good, a good, fundamental, simple dish that you like. I did that, churned a couple of dishes in a row out over the course of a couple of days that were really good, high-level dishes, and suddenly I feel like I can cook again. Same thing with fishing. If the wheels are really coming off, focus on fundamentals, catch a couple of fish, and go down the road. And that's if you're forced to stay and do what you're doing. But there are times where I will literally put the boat in the trailer and call myself defeated and either go somewhere else or go home. And those are more of a wisdom thing, not confidence. And typically when I get to the point where I just trailer it and leave, I'm confident that I wasn't going to catch fish at that point anyway. So it's not a lack of confidence, it's 100% confidence in the recognition that the situation was stacked against me and a fundamental change was better than sitting there beating my head on the wall. Because whether we like it or not, there are certain days where we're just flat going to miss. The GOAT, the greatest bass fisherman of all time, went out on Table Rock Lake with the lead on the final day of a tournament and blanked. Did not catch a single keeper. That tells you that sometimes the wheels are going to come off. The best football team in the world goes undefeated all season, then gets beat in the Super Bowl. You know, those kinds of things happen, and that's unfortunate, and then you just need to rebound from them and go. But it doesn't matter what you compete in. Some days you're going to get beat, and it's how you take that and move on that's going to be important. So, confidence. It's one of those things you need before you have. similar to experience, and it's very fragile. And so you need to protect it and focus it on it, and I think it will help you be better off. So hopefully this information will help you. I get it's not the most specific to fishing podcast I've ever done, but I honestly believe that if you take it to heart and you focus on it, it'll catch you more fish than a lot of my other podcasts. So if you guys want to join the conversation, please do so at Fishful Thinker on Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok. Check out what we're up to on Altitude Sports and Entertainment or World Fishing Network. We're airing 5 days a week on both of those at this point in like 7 countries. So check that out on your cable. And also very important to us, guys, is the YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe while you're there. It's a labor of love. We're trying to get that thing built out, and that would be really important too. So thanks for listening. This has been Fishful Thinker, the podcast.